Welcome back, Shop Rats. Today is Talk About It Tuesday, and by viewer request, we're going to talk cooling systems. Let's watch the show intro. We'll see you in maybe 30 seconds, maybe 5. You never know. I'm Mike, and
this is My Cars Shop.
As a certified mechanic, I have obviously worked on a large number of vehicles, much more than the average person probably has. And I've had a lot of experience in dealing with cooling systems and cooling system problems. Now, there are things that have kind of changed over the years, but not really. But one of the most misunderstood things about cooling systems is like what the thermostat's for, how it functions, engine operating temperatures, and all that kind of stuff. So we're going to talk about, well, each individual component, but we're also going to talk a little bit about the bigger picture of the science, if you will, of how a cooling system functions. Understand that I am not going to be doing this at an engineering level or even, like a doctoral level, because I'm not that smart. First of all, my engineering experience was in fuel systems, not cooling systems. However, I think I have some thoughts that might help you break through some of the BS that a lot of us have been told about a cooling system. So first of all, a cooling system is just that. It is a system to transmit heat out of the engine and into the atmosphere to keep that engine in a safe operating range of temperature. So coolant, antifreeze is pretty much the best overall to use, ethylene glycol or maybe one of these newer whatever they are based coolants, but I'm old school, so we're going to stick with glycol. And I want to touch on that first, that remember that straight water is not the best thing to use in your cooling system, because it actually doesn't necessarily, it's not engineered.
It's engineered to drink.
It's not engineered to pull heat out the way that glycol coolants are. Now remember that antifreeze is best when it's mixed 50-50, 60-40, whatever, with water, so that it doesn't freeze, but it has good, because straight antifreeze will freeze, is what I'm trying to say, or it will slush up. And so it's better to have that mix because of the chemical nature of,
there's stuff there.
I always recommend that because of the anti-corrosion that it puts in your cooling system. All of that stuff is important. Coolant is designed to cool and draw heat out of the engine from around the cylinders and the head and from the oil to dissipate that heat out through the radiator, circulated by a water pump into the radiator and out to the atmosphere. And of course, a lot of vehicles have a heater, and that heater is designed to put some heat into the cab so that you don't freeze your buns off in the winter if you live in the northern area. In that cooling system, the water pump, the coolant circulating through hoses to the radiator and back to the engine, hot water going out, cooler water coming back in. There's one little device in there that is really misunderstood called a thermostat. Now let me make this clear. The thermostat is not there to cool your engine.
The thermostat is not there to cool your engine.
The thermostat is not there to cool your engine.
One of the misunderstandings is that somehow the thermostat controls cooling. Not exactly, right? So thermostat regulates temperature just like your thermostat on the wall, right? So you set a thermostat on the wall, or if you have a climate controlled vehicle, you set thermostat to a specific temperature. My tongue doesn't want to work today. You set your thermostat to a specific temperature, and it will regulate that temperature within a certain amount. Now, people believe that if their engine is running too hot, that they need to put a lower temperature thermostat in there to get that engine to run cooler. Not exactly, because what happens is that thermostat has a range. And that range is designed plus or minus so many degrees. And if that temperature, if it can no longer regulate, then it's still going to overheat because the thermostat is open and that's all it has to offer, and then coolant just simply flows through. So sometimes actually going to a little warmer thermostat and keeping that engine temperature a little higher gives the radiator a chance to do a little better job of cooling. So going to a lower temperature, or even worse, taking the thermostat out, can be a problem. Now here's the second thing that most people don't realize, that running your engine too cool actually can wear the engine. And we wouldn't think of like, well, what do you mean running the engine too cool can actually cause premature engine wear? Think about this. One of the byproducts of the internal combustion process is moisture. And I don't remember how much moisture compared to how many gallons. Like I know there's a number out there somewhere that says if you burn X gallons of fuel, that engine's going to produce X amount of water. It's a known formula. I don't remember what it is. Doesn't matter. But here's the thing, not all of that moisture goes out the tailpipe, because every engine has one little thing called blow-by, where some of that combustion goes past the pistons and down into the crankcase, which means some of that moisture is also getting down in there. If your engine temperature is not high enough, one of the things that happens is will start to condensate in the crankcase, and the oil absorbs some of that moisture, and it never evaporates because the engine temperature is too low. And that alone can also cause rusting inside some engines. It is caused by moisture from combustion processes and other things. Let's be real, a thermostat cannot fix a cooling system that's not adequate for the job. You have to have good airflow, which means you have to have a good cooling fan. You have to have a radiator that does a real good job of dispersing heat. And so those really are the core of a good cooling system. And of course a water pump that circulates, and coolant that does its job, and a thermostat that works properly. But so many people think that the solution to an engine running hot, especially in the hot weather, is to put a cooler thermostat in it, and actually they might be making the problem worse. I know growing up, I was always told that you wanted a 185 degree thermostat in your engine, and that was the good thermostat to have. And if your engine tended to run a little hot, you might put in a 160 degree thermostat to try to keep things cool. And so I understand kind of the myths and wives' tales that go along with that. But especially in more modern engines, and especially in the era of, I think it was OBD1, it goes back a long ways in my little head. Engines, I remember I was a mechanic in the Chrysler dealers at the time, and if your engine did not achieve a minimum of 192 degrees, it would never go into open loop and take sensors and help your gas mileage be optimized. And so it would always be running in enrichment. And your gas mileage could be hurt by 2, 3, even 5 miles per gallon if the engine temperature wasn't high enough. Now, that technology, there's a lot more fail-safes around that now, so it's not totally dependent on thermostat and a cooling coolant sensor to control fuel mixture. But that's where some of my thinking started changing, and then I started realizing that there's just a lot of fallacy out there about this. So, we really want to be aware that if we're not letting that temperature get high enough, we're not going to be necessarily evaporating some of those contaminants out of the oil, and we're actually causing problems that down the road are going to bite us in the hind end. So let's summarize what are the essentials for a good functioning cooling system. They are as follows. A good functioning thermostat, I believe a thermostat around 190 to 195 is probably the best, to be sure that oil temperature is high enough to keep those contaminants boiling out. good coolant that does the job of drawing the heat out of the engine. A good water pump that circulates, of course, good hoses that don't leak. That's kind of a no-brainer. A really good quality radiator that does an amazing job of dispersing that heat as quickly as possible. Good cooling fans that will get that heat out of that radiator as fast as possible. And of course, good airflow if possible in the front of the car. So when you're going down the road at highway speeds, just the air movement will also help keep that thing cool, and those fans probably won't need to run. So think about this. Think about this. If you're circulating coolant around in the engine too fast, if your thermostat is wide open at 160 degrees and there's no restriction, your radiator actually doesn't have time to do the job that it's created to do. So keeping that temperature a little higher, retaining that coolant in the engine a little bit longer, helps that radiator be more efficient at doing its job. So those are my thoughts on coolant, on cooling systems. Ask your questions, fire away with your criticism and your disagreement. Just be nice. Yeah, so that's going to do it for this one. We're over on the Face thing. We're over on Instagram, and she loves us, gets us cookies and stuff like that. We're here on the U thing, so like and subscribe. Spread the word. The channel's growing like crazy. I couldn't be happier, and I really appreciate everybody that's here. All right. Oh, shoot, I almost forgot. It's the most important thing on My Car Shop.
Rock